My name is Jean Hartford. I'm 33 years old, and the night my family decided I was toxic started like every other boring Sunday dinner. Mom's roast, Dad at the head of the table, my sister Danielle and her husband Brad, Uncle Rick, Aunt Carol, a couple of cousins scrolling through their phones, pretending to listen. The same framed photos on the wall, including a picture of our house with a little gold plaque underneath that said, "Home since 1994. I remember staring at that photo, thinking, I literally signed my name to keep that roof over their heads, and somehow still feeling like a guest. We were halfway through dinner at my parents' place, the usual noise, clinking forks, overlapping stories, Brad's phone lighting up every 30 seconds, when Danielle cleared her throat, all theatrical. So, she said, eyes locking on me, everyone's confirmed for the lake house next month except you. She tilted her head, voice sugar-sweet. Are you coming or not? I was mid-bite. I swallowed, set down my fork, wiped my mouth just to buy a second. I haven't decided yet, I said. Of course, that wasn't good enough. Of course you haven't, she muttered into her wine glass. The shift was immediate. You could feel it before you could name it. The tiny tightening in the air. The way people suddenly found their plates fascinating. The way Aunt Carol's jaw flexed. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. Danielle set her glass down a little too hard. Red wine sloshed dangerously close to the rim. It means you always do this, she said louder. You make everything about you. You create drama. You ruin plans. I just said I haven't decided, I replied. My voice stayed calm, but my heart sped up. Because I'm busy, that's all. No, she snapped. Because you're toxic. She said it like she'd been saving that word for months, maybe years, and finally found the perfect moment to drop it in the middle of the table. Toxic. The word hung in the air like smoke. I turned to Dad. He sat at the head of the table, the man who once told me I was his rock when his business almost went under. I waited for him to say, hey, that's too far, to correct her, to defend me, to do anything. He didn't. He just nodded slowly, like Danielle had finally said out loud what he'd been thinking. Maybe it's better if you disappear for a while, Dad said quietly. I blinked. What? Take some space from all of us, he said, still not quite meeting my eyes. I think we all need a break. A break from me, you mean? He didn't deny it. Danielle leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, satisfied, like this was a game and she'd just scored the winning goal. Uncle Rick cleared his throat but didn't speak. Aunt Carol stared at her mashed potatoes like they were doing a magic trick. Brad had his phone half under the table, thumbs flying, probably texting someone about the drama unfolding 2 feet away. Mom was in the kitchen putting away extra dishes, pretending to be busy. The clatter of Tupperware echoed down the hallway. She'd heard everything. She just didn't come out. I scanned the table, waiting, hoping for someone to say, hey, that's harsh, or can we talk about this calmly, or even, not at the dinner table, please. Nothing, just silence and a slow collection of nods that told me everything I needed to know. Okay, I said. Danielle blinked. Okay? Yeah, I pushed my chair back. Okay, I'll disappear. I stood up. The chair legs scraped the floor in a long, ugly sound. I grabbed my keys from the counter, my jacket from the hook by the door. Behind me, everyone stayed seated, like we were still in a meeting and I was just some employee walking out. Where are you going? Mom finally called from the kitchen. Where Dad wants me to go, I answered. Away. Don't be dramatic, she said. A short, dry laugh escaped me. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being obedient. Isn't that what you all wanted? Danielle rolled her eyes. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I turned, hand on the doorknob. What am I doing exactly? Making a scene, acting like a victim. I'm literally doing what you just told me to do, I said. You called me toxic. Dad told me to disappear. So I'm leaving, quietly. Dad sighed, that heavy, exhausted sound I'd heard my whole life. Just go, Jean. We'll talk when everyone's calmed down. We both know you won't, I thought. Sure, Dad, I said instead. We'll talk. I opened the door and walked out. No goodbye. No last look back. Just the cool night air hitting my face and the distant murmur of voices as the door clicked shut behind me. My car felt colder than it should have. I started it, pulled out of the driveway, and drove on autopilot, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, mind completely blank. By the time I got to my apartment, my body felt like it belonged to someone else. I stood in the dark living room for a solid 10 minutes, just standing. Toxic. The word replayed like a song stuck on loop. Not difficult, not opinionated, not stubborn. Toxic. Like a chemical spill. like my existence seeped into cracks and poisoned everyone around me. I thought about all the years I'd shown up for them. When Dad's business started failing 3 years ago, who co-signed the refinance so the bank would even look at him? Me. When Danielle needed a last-minute babysitter so she could go to that concert? Me. When Uncle Rick needed help moving his furniture across town? Me. When Mom's car broke down on the highway at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, who drove out without hesitation? Me. But sure, I was the toxin. The living room suddenly felt too small, too full of memories of late-night calls and, "Can you do me a favor?" I walked straight to my bedroom, dragged my old duffel bag out from under the bed, and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, chargers. No plan, just motion. My phone buzzed on the dresser. "Danielle, don't be childish. Come back and finish dinner." I put the phone face down and kept packing. It buzzed again. "Mom, honey, let's talk about this tomorrow when we're all less emotional." Less emotional. As if I'd been the one hurling the word toxic across the table like a grenade. I finished packing, zipped the bag, grabbed my keys again, and locked the apartment behind me. I didn't know where I was going until I was already on the highway. Jake's cabin. Jake was an old friend from college. He lived out of state now, but last year when I was drowning in work, he'd texted me the code to his cabin's lockbox. "Here's the code. Use the place whenever you need to get away." I'd never needed to, until tonight. The drive was long and dark. Empty highways, rest stops with flickering lights, gas stations where I was the only customer. With each mile, the suburb where I'd grown up shrank in the rearview mirror. By the time I pulled up to the cabin, it was 11 p.m. The place looked exactly like the photos. Small, wooden, quiet, swallowed by trees. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I unlocked the door, flipped on the light. The air smelled like wood and dust and something faintly herbal. I set my bag on the couch and pulled out my phone. 17 new messages, 6 missed calls, all from the last hour. "Danielle, you're being ridiculous." "Mom, please call me. We can fix this." Uncle Rick, "What happened? Your mom's upset." Brad, "Dude, just apologize and move on." I stared at that one a little longer. Apologize? For what? For being called toxic? The last message was from Dad. "Take your time. We'll figure this out." Figure what out, I thought. How to unsay it. How to pretend you didn't nod when she branded me poison. I held my phone for a long moment, thumb hovering over the side button. Then I powered it off. The screen went black. No more buzzing, no more demands, no more guilt in tiny bubbles. The cabin had everything I needed to exist without really existing. A small kitchen, a couch, a bookshelf full of random paperbacks, a fireplace that probably hadn't seen fire in months. I made myself coffee at midnight just because I could, then sat on the small wooden porch, wrapped in one of Jake's old blankets. The trees swayed in the darkness. Somewhere far off, an owl called. For the first time all evening, my shoulders dropped, my jaw unclenched. They'd told me I was toxic. Fine, let them see how the family runs without the poison. The first day was strange. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, forgetting it was turned off and buried in my duffel. My brain kept prompting me to check notifications that weren't there. By day 2, the reflex faded. I read whatever books Jake had lying around. I walked circles through the woods. I cooked simple meals. I slept without alarms. It felt like holding my breath underwater at first. Tight, unnatural. Then slowly it became peaceful. Quiet wasn't scary. Quiet was honest. On day 3, I replayed Danielle's words again. "You make everything about you. You create drama. You ruin plans. You're toxic to this family." What had I actually done to earn that label? I'd said I hadn't decided about a trip. I'd asked follow-up questions when Dad talked about some can't-fail business idea. I'd told Uncle Rick his crypto investment sounded like a scam. I'd suggested Danielle get a second medical opinion because the first doctor brushed her off. My pattern wasn't drama. My pattern was refusing to shut up when something sounded wrong. The family didn't want honesty. They wanted compliance. They didn't want another adult at the table. They wanted a scapegoat. By day 7, a quiet, brutal thought settled in. I didn't miss them. Not the forced dinners, not the eggshell conversations, not the way my stomach nodded every time I pulled into their driveway. I missed the idea of family, the version I'd built in my head. But the actual people? The real dynamic? I didn't miss that at all. On day 11, I woke up before sunrise, made coffee, and sat on the porch watching the sky change from navy to pale blue. The air was cold enough that each breath puffed out in little clouds. You can't hide here forever, I told myself. Whatever they've done with that house, your name is still attached to it. The thought of the house, the one in the photo with the gold plaque, made my stomach twist. 5 years ago, I'd sat in a bank office and signed my name next to Dad's on refinance papers because he'd looked me in the eye and said, "You're helping the family, kiddo. You'll never have to pay a dime. It's just paperwork." I went back inside, unzipped my duffel, and pulled out my phone. It felt heavier than it should have. I held the power button down. The screen lit up with the Apple logo. My reflection stared back at me. Messy hair, dark circles, eyes that looked older than they had 2 weeks ago. Then the notifications hit. The phone buzzed nonstop for 3 solid minutes. Voicemails, texts, missed calls, emails, all pouring in, all demanding attention I didn't want to give. When it finally stopped, I swallowed and opened the voicemail app. Message 1, 8 days ago. Mom. Honey, we're worried. Call us when you get this. Message 2, day 9. Mom again. Okay, this isn't funny anymore. Where are you? Message 3, day 9. Uncle Rick. Hey, call me when you get this. It's important. Message 4, day 10. Dad. Jean, please. We need to talk. It's about the house. I sat up straighter. Message 5, also day 10. Danielle, voice sharp and panicked. This isn't a game. Pick up your phone. We need you. Not we're sorry, not we were wrong, not you're not toxic. Just we need you. I opened the text, scanning for context. Uncle Rick. Day 9. Call me ASAP. Mom. Day 9. Please answer. This is urgent. Danielle. Day 10. Stop ignoring us. Dad. Day 10. We're in trouble. Need to talk. The most recent text was from Uncle Rick 2 hours ago. Bank foreclosing on family house. Only you're on the deed. We're losing everything. Call me. I read it once, twice, a third time. Then I started laughing. That hollow, disbelieving kind of laugh that doesn't feel like it belongs to you. They'd told me to disappear, so I did. And while I was gone, the house I'd helped them save was going up in flames. And suddenly, their toxic daughter was the only one holding the fire extinguisher. For the first time in my entire relationship with my family, one thing was crystal clear. I had all the power. The only question left was what I was going to do with it. The laugh didn't stop right away. It came out of me in sharp, uneven breaths, half disbelief, half something darker. The kind of laugh you let out when the universe hands you irony so sharp it could cut glass. They called me toxic, and now they're drowning in a mess only I can fix. I wiped my eyes, still staring at the last text from Uncle Rick. Bank foreclosing. Only you're on the deed. We're losing everything. I opened the voicemail from Dad next. His voice was strained, older somehow. Jane, please call us. It's about the house. It's urgent. The house. The house with the gold plaque. The house where I learned to ride a bike. The house where Christmas mornings happened. The house I signed my name onto 5 years ago because Dad promised it was just a formality. Now that formality was a legal trap, and I was the only one who could open it. I stared out at the forest through the cabin's window, heart thudding. They wanted me gone. They wanted quiet compliance. They wanted a daughter who never questioned anything, who just smiled and nodded and said, "Sure, Dad," like she was still 16. What they did not want was a daughter who suddenly held all the leverage. But here we were. I sat on the porch steps, phone cold in my hands. The morning air smelled like pine and damp soil. You have to call someone, I told myself, just to see how bad it is. I scrolled to Uncle Rick's number. My thumb hovered. Then I tapped. He picked up on the first ring. "Jean, finally! Where the hell have you been?" "You told me to disappear," I said calmly. "So I did." "This isn't the time for—" He sucked in a breath. "Look, your dad, he missed 3 mortgage payments." "3?" My voice sharpened. "That's 3 months, Rick." He hesitated. "Yes." "And the foreclosure notice?" "It came last week." "And when did you all decide to call me?" 3 days ago." I let that hang in the air. "So let me get this straight," I said. Dad missed 3 payments, got a foreclosure notice, waited 11 days, and then decided to call the toxic daughter? Rick sighed, long and heavy. "He didn't want to bother you." I almost choked. Didn't want to bother me, but telling me to disappear at dinner wasn't a bother? Calling me toxic wasn't a bother? "Jean, please, this isn't about that." "It's exactly about that." He went quiet. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "What do you need from me?" Your signature, Rick said. To refinance or sell or something. The bank won't do anything without you. You're listed on the deed. You're the co-signer. A strange electric feeling went down my spine. Power. For once in my life, I wasn't the one begging. I wasn't the one trying to fix everything for them. They needed me. What happens if I don't sign? I asked. Gene, he warned. What happens? The house goes into foreclosure in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I leaned back against the porch railing. The wood felt solid, grounding. My heartbeat steadied. So you want me, I said slowly, to swoop in and save the house of the family who told me I'm poison? It's more complicated than... No, I said, it's exactly that simple. A long silence. Your mom is... She's not doing well, he finally said. Your dad either. They're scared and ashamed. Are they? I murmured. Or are they just terrified of losing the house? Rick hesitated, and in that hesitation, I heard the truth. I sighed. I'll think about it. What? Gene, there's nothing to think about. This is your family's home. No, Rick, it's the home of people who told me to vanish. So yes, there's a lot to think about. I hung up. The phone immediately buzzed again. Uncle Rick. Declined. Danielle. Declined. Mom. Declined. Dad. Declined. I switched the phone to Do Not Disturb. Let the messages pile up. Let them panic. I spent the next hour pacing the cabin, my mind sharp and strangely calm. Everything felt upside down, but for once, in a way that gave me the advantage. 5 years ago, Dad had come to me desperate. His business was flailing. His credit was shot. No bank would touch him. But if I co-signed, he said, everything would be fine. Just a signature. You won't have to pay anything. I'd believed him. Stupidly. Because that's what daughters do when their father looks them in the eye and swears he'll handle it. But now I saw the pattern. I saw every decision that had led here. I saw every way they'd used me without ever valuing me. And somehow it didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It made sense. They only wanted me when they needed something. Without need, there was no love. At noon, I made my decision. Not because I forgave them, not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I felt guilty, but because I wanted them to see it. I wanted to watch their faces when their toxic daughter walked in, the one they'd been so eager to cast out, and realize she was the only person who could save their legacy. Their silence had been absolute, their rejection clear, their judgment brutal, and now they needed me. I packed my bag, locked the cabin, and drove the 3 hours back toward the city. Music blared in the car, something loud, something angry, something that matched the strange adrenaline humming through my veins. I reached my apartment at 9, showered, slept, and woke up with the same clarity. I'm going to their house. I'm going to hear every excuse, every lie, every rationalization. Then I'll decide how to use this power. At 1:50 p.m., I pulled up to my parents' driveway. Mom's sedan, Dad's truck, Uncle Rick's SUV. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, breathing. Then I got out and knocked. Uncle Rick opened the door, relief washing over his face so fast it almost looked rehearsed. Thank God, he said. Come in. They're in the kitchen. The house looked exactly the same. Same photos, same furniture, same faint smell of Mom's candles. But the air was different. Thick, tense, heavy. When I stepped into the kitchen, I saw my parents hunched over the table, surrounded by foreclosure notices, bank letters, and crumpled tissues. They looked up. Relief. Raw, desperate relief. Gene, Mom whispered, standing. Dad opened his mouth, voice cracking. We're so glad you're here. I pulled out a chair and sat across from them, folding my hands. Tell me what happened. Dad swallowed hard. We missed some payments. How many? I asked. Mom glanced at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. 3, he said. And when did you get the foreclosure notice? 2 weeks ago, he whispered. And you waited 11 days to call me. Silence. He looked down. I didn't want to bother you, he said softly. Not after what happened at dinner. I stared at him. So you told me to disappear, I said slowly, and then got upset when I actually did? Mom started crying. And before I could respond, a voice from behind me broke the air. You're really going to lecture them right now? I turned. Danielle stood in the doorway, arms crossed, same smug expression as the night she called me toxic. She walked into the kitchen. Well, she demanded, are you going to help them or not? I met her eyes. I haven't decided yet. Her smile vanished. What do you mean you haven't decided? I leaned back completely calm. It means, I said, exactly what you said to me that night. I let the silence stretch. I haven't decided yet. The room froze. And for the first time in my life, everyone listened when I spoke. The room went so still I could hear the refrigerator hum. Danielle's face twisted first. Disbelief, then irritation, then something uglier. She wasn't used to me having any power. She was used to me swallowing everything, nodding along, keeping the peace, cleaning up messes I didn't make. Not today. Jean, she said slowly, this is Mom and Dad's house, our family home. You can't just delay this because you're mad. I'm not mad, I said. I'm evaluating. Evaluating what? She snapped. Whether the people who called me toxic 11 days ago deserve access to my signature now. Danielle's mouth fell open. She turned to Mom, desperate for backup. But even Mom looked scared, wringing her hands like she didn't know how to fix this. Dad finally spoke. Jine, he said, voice low and tired. I know what we said that night hurt you. Do you? I asked. Because it didn't sound like a mistake. It sounded like honesty. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Dad cleared his throat. We were frustrated. Things have been stressful. Money is tight. We said things we didn't mean. That's interesting, I said, because everything you said fit perfectly with how you treat me year-round. Jung, no, I cut in. You called me toxic because I said I don't know yet about a cabin trip. That's what started all this. Danielle scoffed. That is not what started. You told me, I said, turning to her, in front of everyone, that I ruin plans, create drama, and make everything about me. Well, you do. Uncle Rick let out a quiet, defeated groan behind us. I looked at her. Really looked. Danielle, the golden child, the one who always sat closest to Mom, the one no one questioned, the one whose bad decisions were quirks, and my logical concerns were attitude. So I'm toxic because I ask questions? I asked. Because I don't blindly agree with everything this family says? Because you make people uncomfortable, Danielle fired back. Dad nodded a little too eagerly. Every family gathering, Jean, you push, you challenge, you question everything. That tension isn't easy. I leaned forward. So let me get this straight, I said. Mom calls me to help when her car breaks down. When Uncle Rick needs furniture moved, he calls me. When Dad needed someone to co-sign the house refinance, he came to me. Silence. But when I have a thought, or a different opinion, or suggest people not fall for crypto scams, Uncle Rick winced. And suddenly I'm the problem? Mom whispered. We just want harmony, honey. I laughed once. Harmony or obedience? Nobody answered. I pushed the foreclosure papers toward me and scanned the top pages. Okay, I said. Explain from the beginning. What exactly are we dealing with? Dad swallowed. We refinanced for $305 5 years ago. Paid it down some, but with the business slowing down, I couldn't make February's payment, then March, then April. How much do you owe right now? $250. And how much is needed to catch up? $15,000, he said quietly. Do you have it? Mom's lower lip trembled. No. Any way to get it? They exchanged a look. The look of people who had run out of options weeks ago. Mom whispered, we were hoping maybe you could help. Danielle immediately cut in. It's not giving us money. It's helping your parents. Helping, I repeated slowly. Like how I helped by co-signing this refinance. Like how I helped every time emergency struck. I looked at Danielle. Where's your $15,000? She bristled. I have kids, Jean. I can't just... And I'm single, I said. So automatically I must have a vault of cash ready to save the day? That's not what we're saying, Danielle protested. Dad shifted in his chair. We're just saying you have more flexibility. I stared at him. I make $68,000 a year. I have rent, a car payment, student loans, and bills. I'm not rich just because I don't have children. Mom whispered, please, Jean. Uncle Rick finally spoke. Look, they really do need you. The bank won't do anything without you. You're on the deed. Nothing can move forward until you sign. That part I already knew. And I knew how banks worked. Refinancing without me? Impossible. Selling the house? Impossible. Stalling foreclosure? Impossible. Without me, everything was already on fire. I tapped the stack of papers, thinking. Then I looked at Dad. Why didn't you call me sooner? He lowered his head. I didn't want to bother you. But calling me toxic at dinner, not a bother? Mom's voice cracked. Jean, please. I leaned back in my chair. Here's the situation, I said evenly. I will sign whatever the bank needs to keep this off my credit, but understand something. 3 pairs of eyes lifted to me. I'm not doing this to save your house. Shock flickered across their faces. I'm doing this so my life isn't destroyed by the foreclosure. I'm doing it because I refuse to let your financial mess sink me with you. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. And after the refinance is handled, I continued, I'm done. Completely. Mom's eyes widened. Jean, No more Sunday dinners. No more being the family's backup plan. No more help us one more time. No more guilt when I don't play savior. No more being the person you call only when you've run out of other options. Danielle's face hardened. So you're cutting us off? I met her stare. You cut me off first. You just didn't expect to need me later. Silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating silence. Uncle Rick looked down at his shoes. Mom whispered, "We didn't cut you off. We just needed a break." You called me toxic, I said. Dad told me to disappear. You stood in the kitchen and let it happen. We didn't mean, Mom started. You did mean it, I said. Maybe for the first time, and I'm choosing to believe you. Danielle's face went red. I stood. Get me the refinance paperwork, I said. I'll sign whatever needs to be signed. I'll meet with the bank. I'll fix the mess. Their relief was immediate, palpable, embarrassing. But after that, I added, I reached for my keys. You will never have to deal with your toxic daughter again. Mom gasped. Dad opened his mouth like he wanted to stop me, but no words came. Uncle Rick stepped forward. John, I shook my head. You all wanted me gone, I said quietly. Now I will be. The difference is, this time, it's my choice. I started toward the door. When can you meet with the bank? Dad called after me, voice almost breaking. Tomorrow, I said without turning around. Have the papers ready. And I walked out, leaving behind a kitchen full of stunned silence and people who had never expected to pay the emotional bill they'd been running up for years. For the first time since Sunday dinner, I felt calm. Not peaceful, but calm, like a storm deciding where to go next. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. Heart steady, mind clear. Today wasn't about family. It wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about repairing something broken. Today was logistics. Numbers, forms, signatures, self-preservation. I dressed simply. Black slacks, a clean blouse, hair pulled back. The kind of outfit that said, I'm here to handle business, not emotions. When I arrived at this bank's downtown branch, Dad, Mom, and Uncle Rick were already waiting. Dad stood when he saw me, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped like someone had turned down his gravity setting. Mom's face was blotchy, eyes swollen from crying. Uncle Rick gave a strained smile. Jane, thank you for coming. I nodded. No small talk, no soft landing. I walked straight into the office where the loan officer greeted us with a professional, pitying, tight-lipped smile. We sat. She pulled up the account on her computer, the screen reflecting numbers in her glasses. Then she frowned. Oh dear. Dad shrank in his seat. She clicked and scrolled. Scrolled more. Shook her head like a disappointed math teacher who already knew the kid didn't study. 3 missed payments, she said. Escalated risk rating. Your mortgage has entered the foreclosure timeline. Her tone made it clear. This wasn't a surprise to her, only to us. You're lucky your co-signer stepped in when she did. Dad said nothing. Mom dabbed her eyes. Uncle Rick scratched his forehead. Meanwhile, I took out a notepad, my notepad, and began writing down everything. Interest, penalties, deadlines, options. Because God forbid my family come prepared with any documentation of their own disaster. The meeting was brutal. Paper trails, missing documents, income inconsistencies, questions neither parent could answer directly. By the end of the morning, the loan officer sighed and said, We'll need more documents before we can restructure anything. I looked at Dad. Where are the originals? He blinked. Which originals? I stared at him. All of them, my brain screamed. But instead I said, we'll gather everything before the next meeting. And I meant I would, because no one else was capable of remembering to bring their ID, much less their tax forms. Day 2, the unraveling. I took the afternoon off work, drove back to their house, and found Dad in his office surrounded by mismatched stacks of papers dating back to 2004. Receipts for auto parts, old Christmas cards, broken pens, expired coupons, everything except what we needed. Mom hovered helplessly behind me. I thought your father had it all organized. He absolutely did not. I rolled up my sleeves. 3 hours later, I had created labeled piles. Taxes, bank statements, mortgage letters, business invoices, random crap. Meanwhile, Dad paced and sighed loudly after every document he couldn't find, as if the papers themselves had betrayed him. By 7 p.m., my head throbbed, but the binder I assembled looked more organized than anything they'd touched in years. I left without staying for dinner. They didn't ask me to. Day 4, the second meeting. The loan officer opened the binder I'd prepared and raised her eyebrows. Wow, she said, this is very thorough. I didn't smile. Dad attempted one. It looked like it physically hurt him. She flipped through the pages. However, there's an issue. Of course there was. 2 years of incomplete or unfiled tax documents, inconsistent income statements, bank statements with gaps, a missing insurance letter. My jaw clenched. I could feel my molars grinding. Mom's voice shook. "Can't we just proceed?" "No," the loan officer said firmly. "We need accurate documents." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Dad looked at me like I had caused this. Day 6. Jean, the adult in the room. I'd had enough. I showed up with my own stapler, my own folders, a checklist, printed copies of bank emails, sticky notes labeled in colors they could not possibly mess up. Dad forgot his ID. Again. Meeting rescheduled. Mom apologized. I didn't respond. Uncle Rick quietly helped me reorganize the binder, while Dad muttered about these damn banks treating honest people like criminals. Honest people. The irony almost made me laugh. Day 7. The car confrontation. After a 4-hour session with the loan officer, I walked to my car, exhausted. Danielle was leaning against the passenger door, like a villain reveal. I stopped. "What are you doing here?" She pushed her hair behind her ear. "I just wanted to say thanks for helping." I didn't respond. She shifted. "I mean that you didn't have to, and I know we all said some things." "We didn't all say some things," I corrected. "You said I was toxic. Dad told me to disappear. I didn't say anything." She opened her mouth, maybe to deny it, maybe to twist it. I cut her off. "And don't pretend this was an emotional moment. You meant every word." Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to breathe underwater. "I was upset," she managed. "And you were honest," I said. "The two are not mutually exclusive." She stood there with her fake soft expression until I unlocked my car, got inside, and shut the door in her face. Day 10. The paperwork gauntlet. At the next meeting, we were finally ready. I had every document meticulously organized. The loan officer spread everything out, asked questions, confirmed numbers. Then she printed the refinance package, a thick blue folder, nearly 50 pages. Mom sniffled. Dad swallowed hard. Rick stared at his folded hands. I took the pen and signed, page after page, form after form, signature after signature. Every stroke of ink secured their house and severed my last obligation to them. When I finished, the loan officer stood and extended her hand. "Congratulations," she said. "The house is safe." I didn't shake her hand. I simply nodded, closed the pen, and packed my binder. Then I turned to my parents. "I want to be clear," I said. "This was the last thing I will ever do for you." Mom's lips parted. "Jean." "No." My voice was calm. I'd never sounded more certain. "You will not call me for favors. You will not ask me for money. You will not expect me to clean up any more crises. After today, you lose the right to my help." Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. "We can talk about this." "We won't," I said. Uncle Rick sighed. "Jean, let's not burn bridges." "The bridge burned itself," I replied. "I'm just walking away from the ashes." No one spoke. No one thanked me. Not really, because gratitude requires humility. My family had never learned that language. I picked up my bag and walked out. No hugs, no goodbyes, no parting promises. Just the soft click of the door closing behind me, and the sound of a 40-year-old chapter ending without ceremony. For the first time in years, my phone didn't feel like a ticking bomb. No one was blowing it up with demands. No guilt-laced, "Can you help with this?" texts. No frantic pleas when I didn't respond within 5 minutes. Just quiet. The day after signing the refinance, I woke up in my own apartment, sunlight peeking through the blinds, the city humming softly outside. I made coffee, sat near the window, and realized something. I didn't feel obligated to anyone. I didn't feel pulled in 10 directions. I didn't feel like someone's financial safety net. I didn't feel guilty for existing. I was free. 6 months later. People say time heals everything. It doesn't. Time just gives you enough distance to see things for what they really were. 6 months passed. Quietly, without drama, without expectations. And in that silence, I rebuilt. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just slowly, deliberately, piece by piece. I moved to a better apartment. 3rd floor corner unit, big windows, sunlight that didn't feel like it was fighting through grime. I bought a couch that wasn't secondhand. I hung plants. I started cooking actual meals instead of defaulting to microwaved pasta. I hosted small dinners with friends who genuinely liked me, who laughed with me, not at me. People who asked how I was doing without expecting me to fix their lives in return. I stopped checking my phone, hoping to see my family's names. And eventually, I stopped checking for them at all. The silence wasn't cold. It wasn't punishing. It was peaceful. Equal parts healing and sobering. Because deep down, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. They didn't reach out after I saved the house. Not once. No apology, no genuine thank you, no effort to rebuild anything. Their silence wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. If they didn't speak to me, they wouldn't have to face what they'd done. And honestly, I preferred it that way. Then, one Tuesday in May, I was at my desk finishing some emails when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, same area code as my hometown. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. Hours later, I finally listened. "Hey, it's Dad." His voice was softer, rougher. "I know it's been a while. I've just been thinking about Thanksgiving and everything, really. What we said, what your sister said." He paused long enough that I wondered if the voicemail had cut off. I won't lie, I was angry. We all were. But I've had time. And I realize now that maybe we pushed too hard. Maybe we didn't see things clearly. He exhaled shakily. "Anyway, I was wondering if you'd want to talk. Just you and me. Grab a coffee maybe. Not to rehash everything. Just to, talk." Another pause. "Hope you're okay. I miss you. Call me if you want." That was it. I listened again, wondering if I'd missed something. Some hint of accountability. Some acknowledgement of calling me toxic. Some recognition of telling me to disappear. But no. Just vague regrets wrapped in soft language. The emotional equivalent of shrugging. He wanted connection, but without reckoning, without accountability, without change. And I had finally learned that I didn't need people who only reached out when their pride was dented and their hands were empty. I blocked the number, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Choosing myself, I went for a walk afterward. It was one of those rare spring days where everything felt new, like the city had washed itself clean overnight. I passed a family on a lawn, 2 kids throwing a frisbee, parents in folding chairs, someone grilling burgers. 6 months ago, that sight would have hurt. Would have felt like a life I'd been cut out of. But now, it didn't sting. It was just people, just a scene, just life. Because I wasn't chasing that version of family anymore. The Hallmark version, the fantasy version. I had friends who listened, coworkers who respected me, a home that felt peaceful, a life that didn't require emotional acrobatics. Sometimes I ate dinner alone, sometimes with others, but every night I chose peace over performance. I stopped shrinking to be tolerated. I stopped bending myself into shapes that made other people comfortable. I stopped auditioning for a family role I'd never been cast in. And the biggest surprise? I didn't miss them. Not really. I missed the idea of what they could have been. But ideas don't pay emotional rent. I used to think being disowned, even quietly, even passively, would destroy me. But their silence wasn't a void. It was a door closing. And once it closed, I finally heard the one voice that had been drowned out my entire life. My own. I'm not invisible anymore. Not because they finally saw me, but because I stopped trying to earn my place at their table. And instead, I built my own.